Hello everyone, this is Oliver, and in this video I'm going to give you my testimony as a student at the Faculty of Astrological Studies in London. Well, I started studying there in December 2017 and I finished studying there in December 2024. As for my training, my education, I was pretty happy with the material. I've studied all 9 modules via distance learning, which means that I had to download the material, I had to read it on my own, I had to do many exercises. I sent them to my tutor, I received feedback from them about the exercises. It was a really hard work because there were many exercises, working really hard, having to pass 2 exams, and I learned a lot, and I was happy for this in this process, and I was grateful for my tutors. However, the surprise was when I took the final exam, the advanced exam. I received the feedback of this exam in December 2025, and the decision of the 2 examiners, which are 2 people who decide to correct following their own criteria, was that I failed the exam. And when I read the feedback, I couldn't believe what I read, because there were many things which were not taught or said during the module, especially the last one. And I had the impression that the last module was like, oh, there's a huge gap between the last module and the final exam. But the worst thing is that there's kind of hidden criteria, which is not stated anywhere, which is what the examiners are following, and which is not said or mentioned, or it doesn't appear in the exam guidelines, for example. I'm going to give you some examples of how, or some of the feedback the examiners told me, which I didn't agree at all. And I sent them the counter arguments for some of their arguments. I will give you later on more information about it. All right, so I'm going to start just giving you some examples of the examiner's feedback. For example, at some point they said that astrologers and psychologists know what I meant by archetype, a word I used in the consultation, but that was not an expression used in everyday conversation. Because in the exam you need to prepare 50 pages, and you need to prepare a natal chart and forecasting material, and then you have to give a consultation combining natal and forecasting part during 1.5 hours with a consultant. When they said that about the archetype, I replied that the consultant literally said, I wasn't expecting the chart to speak so much about me and so much about how I do my job and how am I inside my job. And then I replied, the archetypes are quite powerful, yes indeed, and there are different ways they are experienced. That's why I'm asking you just to check how you live them. So I introduced the word archetype after she mentioned and recognized how strongly the chart spoke about her, so she could better grasp the concept. So the time was anchored in her own experience rather than being introduced out of nowhere. By the way, at some point the consultant also mentioned that she was doing therapy. At the beginning of the session, the consultant said that if she didn't understand anything, she would simply ask. Another example is that the consultant had a Pluto transit, and I explained her what the Pluto transit entailed, and at some point I mentioned that would transform herself. So she asked me, what do you mean by transform yourself? And the examiner said they just summarized, in quotations, things that are intense or bring regeneration, maybe with depths, unconscious aspects, emotional complexities. However, the full transcription was things that are intense or bring regeneration, somehow as if a constant regeneration process, and with maybe some experiences which are connected to desiring transformation, maybe with deaths, with unconscious aspects, maybe emotional complexity somehow. That's the energy of Scorpio. So it's willing to get to know, or maybe with power as well, or areas which are related to powerful positions. This is about the areas which I'm not covering in this session, which are the taboos, because I refer to topics that, according to the faculty convention, we could not cover in the session, which are sex, death, health, and controversial subjects. So the examiners considered I was not clear, or this information could disturb the consultant. And the funny thing is that the consultant had stellium in Scorpio plus the Sun Scorpio. So she was ready to absorb, to understand, and she wouldn't be shocked by that information. But I was using a proper language because I was considering the profile of my consultant. So I'm more aware of my candidate's astrological background, rather than limiting myself to saying the word death is forbidden. I know how the person is. So if you want to talk about Pluto transit and you want to be clear and you know the person has this background, I find it appropriate. Another example is that the examiner said that when I refer to specific interpretation, for example, I said in October, December, in this period, maybe the faith and the confidence might support the regeneration, transformation, and might imply a new beginning as for your philosophy. And my consultant said, all right, okay. And the examiner said, you are correct in the way you translated the symbols, but the resulting sentence may need further explanation. And I said that I didn't consider it was necessary a further explanation because I immediately asked her if it resonated with her to ensure that she could process the information. At some point, for example, my consultant said she had trouble visioning that, and they considered that it was difficult for her to understand my information. However, I was giving an interpretation, giving different ways this information could be reflected, different possible interpretations. And when she meant she wouldn't, she had trouble visioning that, she referred to specific areas she couldn't match with her own reality. And she was kind of processing the information I was telling her. And later on she said, I have got a strong personality in terms of being energetic or happy person. So that part, yes, I think I bring that to my job because that's part of me. But I can't think of anything else right now that would resonate with what you just said. So she was not misunderstanding the information. She was just trying to adjust that information to her own reality, trying to see where or what applied to her own experience. So I consider that this was a clear mistake the examiners made. There were some technical mistakes the examiners made. For example, at some point they said that my synastry by wheel should include the MC-IC axis in the outer wheel, and I had not provided any synastry by wheel. And furthermore, there's an article which is cited regarding conventions for synastry interpretation, This article, which is article 4.4, didn't require the inclusion of the MC-IC axis. If you see the bi-wheel, you see the MC, but you don't see the IC. It's not written anywhere that the IC should be included. Another point is that the examiner said that I should include explicit consent of the consultant to be recorded during the session. And the funny thing is that this is not written anywhere. And even in some of the materials, as example, we've got in module 9, one of the tutors doesn't ask the consultant to be recorded. And we are taught that this should be written, asked in the letter, the written letter we send the consultant before taking the consultation. So that was another funny part. Another example that the examiners considered I was not keeping a positive focus, and they said that the first and the last sentence was not positive and that would leave a mark on the person. And my argument was that the last sentence I gave the consultant before finishing the consultation was, "You were quite intuitive when you chose the topics." I was referring to the topics she chose for the forecasting part, because these topics matched what was alive, the energy, the transits. So I was clearly giving her a positive acknowledgement. Moreover, the consultant says at the very end, "I think all the ideas were really clearly exposed, and I can really envision like how this work I'm currently doing will end or will give the results I'm looking for. So yeah, I don't think I have any more questions. I know the path I'm trying to follow, and if the charts agree with me, then I think I'm on the right way." So this clearly contradicts my examiner's comment as for giving negative feedback or focus, because the person was positive, had a positive feeling as for the consultation, as for her situation. So, and I was giving her positive feedback at the very end. Another point was that the examiner said that I should avoid using astrological jargon. And then my tutor during the last module said that if the consultants know a lot of astrology, then using the terminology can be okay. And when I was doing the consultation, I said, I'm going to talk about the elements, right? You know that in astrology, well, are you familiarized with astrology vocabulary? Do you have any notions? And she said, I think I have some notions. I will be able to follow. Don't worry, okay, all right. I said, it's just to mention some words about astrology. And she said, if I don't understand anything, I will simply ask. So I use a few words, and I don't think I should be penalized because of that, because it's a way that she can learn as well. So to me, I had the impression that the examiners had some criteria that they saw like archetype penalized, astrological factors penalized, death penalized, but they were not considering the whole exam, the context. They were not considering my consultant, what she said, the context, her background, and is taking everything out of this point. There was another technical point the examiners penalized, and it was about the fact that they said that I didn't include the third hit of a transit. It's true that I didn't include the third hit of a transit, but because I was considering a time frame from April 2025 till March 2026. And one of the transits, the third hit, was in April 2026, and the other transit, the third hit, was in May 2026. So the third hit was outside the time frame. So that's why I didn't include the third hit. So I shouldn't be penalized because of that. So having said this, I realized there were many things, many comments, which were debatable, which were subjective, which were not clearly about astrology, but about how they interpreted astrology, how they interpreted astrology should be conducted. And it wasn't about assessing your astrology knowledge or how you adapt to the consultant, because at some point I thought, wow, I'm adapting more if I take this into consideration. For example, the background of the person. If the person has got strong Scorpionian energy, she can deal, and these topics are going to will appear because it's part of her nature, basically. So after I saw this feedback, I sent the faculty a letter with 12 pages with my counter arguments. The answer was that if I was not happy with the result, I could purchase the option of being re-examined again, paying £450 or 500 euros. I can't remember exactly, so quite a lot of money. And then other two examiners would re-examine my paper. But for me, that wasn't an option because I wanted a revision. I wanted my examiners to check the mistakes they had made. I wanted them to see I didn't agree with that. And also because the fact that if other two examiners correct your paper following the same hidden criteria, this could lead to the same result without anyone or no one correcting them, because the point is that who supervises the examiners in the case they make mistakes? Because at the end of the day, it's two people, humans who can make mistakes. And this is a serious thing, because this is the last exam for a paper, for a diploma, which is recognized all around the world, and is supposed to be from a prestigious institution that is supposed to guarantee the astrological knowledge and is supposed to have tools to guarantee this. So I realized there's not a fair process because students don't have any right to revise the exam. There's no guarantee at all. So I told them, and they just said that that's the system, you take it or you leave it. At that point, I felt there was no way out. I decided to write a respectful, educated article exposing the flaws of the system and how the examiners might have made some mistakes. I posted this article on a private forum from Facebook, students and tutors have. And after 2 hours and 15 minutes, this article, I received an answer from the director of the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and she asked me to remove the article so that we could talk to the bottom of the issue calmly. I said that I was not going to remove the article. I could remove it or update the situation after we talked. And immediately the article was removed by some administrator. We had a meeting, I talked to her, I exposed some of my arguments. She didn't consider the arguments, she just defended the system, defended examiners, that they had lots of experience, that the exams were thoroughly revised. She just said that I didn't fail because of not asking explicitly for the consent for the consultant to be recorded. That was the only acknowledgement, but nothing else. The recommendation was that I could take like the preparing module to sit the exam again and then to take the final exam again. Then I asked for the breakdown of the grades, and what was my surprise? In order to pass the exam, you need to get 70 marks out of 100. So what was my final mark? 69. And the funny thing was that there were two examiners. One examiner said I had 67, and the other one passed my exam with 71.5. I couldn't believe what I saw, because how can two examiners have different opinions about a final exam for such an important diploma, which is so contradictory? For one examiner, you pass, for the other one, you fail. So there's no clarity. They don't have a clear idea of what is a pass and what is a failure, because otherwise they would agree. I have been a teacher myself. I have been an examining board, and we never and ever could disagree whether it is a pass or a failure. And if we had that situation, we would compare with a third person to make sure that we would agree with our mark. So after all this situation, I wrote them again about so many contradictions, the contradictions I saw in the feedback from the examiners, and just the answer was, you had the chance to purchase, to be re-examined by two other examiners just for 1 month. You missed that part, or you didn't take it, and it's your responsibility, and that's all. So I want everyone to know about how the faculty works, about the system, and just to let you know that two people who you don't know their situation, you don't know their experience, you don't know their state of mind, you don't know how tired they are, you don't know how objective or subjective they are, you don't know what they interpret from a sentence, from a paragraph, you don't know anything about them. We are all humans, make mistakes, but the worst thing is that they don't reconsider their mistakes. When I look at the chart from the faculty, I realize that there's a Saturn conjunction. Saturn is conjuncting Pluto in the 9th house in Leo. This means that there's so much strict rigidism, this Plutonian, this dominance, this power, this position of power, and extreme manipulation as well. And for me, that is this very descriptive of the system as for exams. Like, they think that it's a supreme, it's a extra high level, and like if they were God. And the other polarity is no, it's nothing. The students are nothing. So we've got a power, we don't recognize the mistakes, and there's nothing else. So that, for me, that's very descriptive. So I consider there's a huge gap between the reality and maybe their way to interpret, because I had the feeling that the corrections were as if you were going to pass a PhD or something, nothing compared to what you have been studying. So I want people to know how it works, because that was my experience. After studying there for many years, I've been very grateful for what I've learned. I've learned a lot. I'm very grateful for the corrections I got from my tutors, but obviously the final situation with exam, I didn't consider. It was objective. It was not coherent. There were many contradictions, and I expected them to act differently. But especially I didn't know these hidden criteria and the way they correct exams. Yeah. Well, good luck with your studies, with your path, and all the best.